Okay, y'all, I'm in transit right now, but I wanted to take a moment to register this exchange that took place last night after I read this article by Catherine D. Now, some of you might remember Catherine D., the name she goes under, Default Friend. I interviewed her on this channel, I can't remember when, a few months ago. And things were generally cool between us, but things have taken a turn since my response to this article of hers, which I generally liked. But there was one thing about it that, as I put it, stuck in my craw that I wanted to challenge her on. And things did not go well, as you will see. And I'm just recording this video because anytime there's like sort of this breakdown in communication, or anytime there's what I feel to be a misunderstanding, or where things go south in an effort to communicate with someone else about an idea, it registers with me. It stays with me. I have a general sense of often being misunderstood, and it's based on the fact that I feel it has happened a few times. So it's sort of for my own, just for the record, that I like to keep track of these things, and anybody who wants to weigh in on it can do so. So this article, and I'll link to the article itself, The Brief and Wondrous Life of a Scene. I'm basically in sympathy with what she is saying here, how things have gotten so polarized, and you can't just be an independent thinker who covers topics in a non-judgmental way, not judging one way or the other, but if you're talking about something that the ruling ideology has determined to be verboten, then you have to come across as properly judgmental of that thing. So, ironically, something came up here. So she talks about the book Kill All Normies, which took a look at the alt-right in a way that tried to be objective, and of course people on the left were hating on her, this writer, for doing that, even though she was, of the left herself. So, and then she talks about the making of the documentary TFW No GF, about some young men who might be considered quote unquote incels. And then she talks about a documentary that's been made about Alex Jones recently, called Alex's War, and how nobody wants to pick it up because Alex Jones is this reviled figure among the mainstream media establishment. All well and good so far, all right. But okay, so the one thing that she said that I didn't care for is, let me see if I can find. Okay, here's the little disclaimer that she makes about Alex Jones in this article, that's generally sympathetic to Jones and sympathetic to the idea of making a documentary about him that isn't just a hate fest, mainstream media, politically correct SJW hate fest. She writes, while he's not without his faults, speaking of Alex Jones, least of all in his role in spreading misinformation about the Sandy Hook shooting, his role in shaping both American culture and politics is undeniable. All right, little thing there, but it stuck in my craw. It caught my attention, and I had to say something about it because I'd heard Gavin McInnes recently say something like, Alex Jones is not so bad. Of course, okay, he was wrong about Sandy Hook, but blah blah blah. All right. So I just wanted to pull on that thread a little bit. Like, why do we have to do this ritualized Alex Jones was wrong on Sandy Hook disclaimer in order to be thought of as a as somebody who's not just beyond the pale, and somebody who's absolutely an appalling person who must be ignored and reviled and deplatformed and everything like that. Which isn't so much about anything relating to Sandy Hook. All right. Really, it's not so much about that, but it's more about how this whole need to say, of course I think that X is bad. This sort of ritualized, what comes across to me as virtue signaling. It comes across to me as virtue signaling, even if it's claimed to be otherwise. So here begins our exchange, our ill-fated exchange. I've alienated yet another person, guys. It's just the way I am. I wrote, enjoyed reading this, but why the egregious Sandy Hook disclaimer? All right. Thank you, she writes back. Well, 2 reasons. Number 1, this was written with a mainstream audience in mind. In other words, she'd initially wanted to publish this somewhere that would be like a mainstream journal, wherein you would have to I guess make that disclaimer. I would say you could just write about Alex Jones and just sidestep that whole thing. But she's saying that she wrote with a mainstream audience in mind, so there was a tactical aspect to it. But number 2, she says, this is a point I disagree with Jones on. I think there is a way to talk about things being ops without exploiting it. It's still radioactive, but people talk about what we did in Cambodia, for example, and there's no reason that type of thing can also apply back home. Jones really did fuck up with Sandy Hook. I don't think it means he needs to be wholly deplatformed. He needs to be so wholly deplatformed you can't even criticize him without getting backlash yourself. But I think part of the treating people with fairness is acknowledging their missteps. Okay. So my reaction to that was, I get what you're saying, but I feel differently. I don't get why one must simp/virtue signal so vigorously in favor of the official version of events with SH in order to be thought of as a respectable person. Just a pet peeve of mine. Okay, and I explained that, I think, already, my reason for taking that perspective. She writes back, I hear you, but it's not a virtue signal. Okay, so the first sign of sort of getting her back up a little bit. But it's not a virtue signal, or it's how I actually feel. It happens to be partially a mainstream take. All right, so that's not necessarily her getting her back up. I'll rescind that. The rest of the article, I think, is pretty sympathetic. That seems like I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. I'm dwelling on a small point, and I agree that I am. It's a small point in the article, but it's something I wanted to take on just the same, because it's a small point, but it exemplifies something that I think is bigger, which is that somehow we have to say certain things. We have to defer to certain sensibilities. But her take is that AJ really did fuck up, in her words, on Sandy Hook. So I responded this way. I said, perhaps if you have the time and the inclination, you can tell me why you think that AJ fucked up in covering this case. I know the mainstream press says he did, but I loathe them and think they're worthless liars and shameless propagandists, so I can't bring myself to read their sanctimonious editorials. I know that AJ isn't known for tact or subtlety, but then again, if a substantial portion of the reported event was untrue, perhaps even fabricated, I am not sure tact or subtlety was called for. All right. And so this is where things took a turn. So she responded, in response to my question, what did he do wrong? How did he fuck up in his response to SH? The same thing that Gavin McInnes was saying, just this disclaimer. Yes, we can be dissidents, but we need to be differential on this point. We can protect or defend Alex Jones from his detractors, but we have to say that he was wrong on this thing. Okay, so she says he insisted contra evidence that Sandy Hook didn't happen. Not that Lanza was groomed by feds, not that it was somehow designed by the powers that be, not that it was a false flag, controversial and radioactive to be sure, but that it was fake, period. He claimed the death certificates were falsified. Trust me when I tell you children died at Sandy Hook Elementary School. It's one thing to question the structures that enable that kind of tragedy, even to suggest government bodies turn a blind eye. I'm not saying I promote either view, just like I think they're more sympathetic than repeating it was fake to the extent that the parents, some of whom I've met and spoken to, were harassed and sued. All right, so here she's saying that he isn't wrong for taking the wrong approach, or for being insensitive to, I don't know, something. It's just his entire, the way that the fact that he doubted this event, the reality of this event, the fact that he doubted the reality of this event and that he made it known that he doubted the reality of this event. That was how he fucked up. All right, that was a disappointing answer to hear from her. Also, this thing, trust me when I tell you children died at SH Elementary School. Trust me when I tell you. I mean, why do I trust you? Nothing against you, but you're just a person on the internet who I've spoken to once or twice. Why should I trust you? So I go into that in a second. Let me go back to the exchange. Okay, I write back. See, I don't believe that expressing doubt as to the reality of an event, especially one in which the official account is loaded with numerous inconsistencies and anomalies, means that one has, quote, fucked up. You say he promoted this perspective, quote, contra evidence. If AJ was wrong, then the answer should have been to display this said evidence, not to bray for AJ to be removed from the internet or to assume the sort of censorious sanctimonious how dare you tone, that these media types love to assume as a supposed badge of righteousness. Instead, their recourse was to pursue deplatforming and legal intimidation. How nauseatingly typical. You say, trust me when I tell you that children died at Sandy Hook. With respect, why should I trust you on this subject any more than you should trust me? I'm not claiming any position on this topic, except a strong doubt on the official story. For me, it all began when, and I go into some details here, which I don't know if it's so important to talk about those details right now. But you can read the exchange, if you want. So then I follow up by saying, I know I could be accused of making a proverbial mountain out of a metaphorical molehill here, since the prime focus of your piece isn't about SH at all, but your disclaimer stuck in my craw for reasons I have tried to explain. Here's the piece of media that really made me question things, if you or anyone else is interested. And I quote Sophia Smallstorm's lecture on Sandy Hook, which was a revelation for me. Okay. So then she said a couple things, and now she turns pretty hostile. I'm not commenting on his punishment or the public reaction, but I think as someone who's studied and written on SH extensively, I'm well within my rights to condemn his words and actions. You're within your rights? When did I say you've got no right? This is, this is disingenuous. This is rhetorical disingenuousness. This is shifting the goalposts. It's very disappointing. Doubt, as I've said numerous times, is one thing. Well, maybe she's written this elsewhere. I don't know. I don't consider what he did doubt. Okay. I mean, he said he didn't think the event happened. He doubted that essentially means that he doubted that the event happened. But you're saying this is something different from doubt. Something worse than just doubt. I don't quite get that. My work on Sandy Hook is anchored in primary source documents. So she's written some other stuff about it. Fine. But, this whole, it's fine that she's, looked into it, and maybe she talks about talking to the parents and stuff, talking to some parents. But the whole, trust me when I tell you that this happened, well, I mean, how does she know? What does she know that I mean, she talked to the parents and was convinced that they were telling the truth, and therefore I should just defer to her perspective. I mean, did she expect them to say no, it was all a hoax? All right, and again, I'm not defending. I don't know exactly where I stand on the event, except to say the official story has got so many anomalies and problems. As there's so many things that just, as you can see if you watch that Sophia Smallstorm documentary or extended lecture. Okay, and now she gets hostile. The only sanctimonious person in this exchange is you. I have an opinion that you see as too liberal. She quotes me as saying too liberal. I never said she was too. I didn't get into her saying that she was too liberal. She's assigning that to me. I get the same exact shit from people who think I'm too right-wing. If you don't know where I stand based on the thousands of words and multiple hours of content I've produced, I don't know. That's not really relevant here. What's relevant is that the need to, to throw in this disclaimer. Oh, he was wrong in saying that this particular event never happened. But she wants to say, well, I've studied this extensively. It sounds a little bit like she's saying, I know more than you, and you just better defer to me on this. Which again, what does she know that I don't? What does she know that anybody else doesn't? She doesn't reveal that. She just says she's written about the topic a lot, which I wasn't even aware of, but fair enough. And then she says later, okay, I said it stuck in my craw. Here's a piece of media that made me question things. It stuck in my craw. She writes, it's stuck in your craw because of your own biases. I can agree with the MSN on a single point without being an NPC. I didn't call her an NPC. This is disingenuous. This is disappointing. The NPC shit is busting my ass for not having the prescribed right-wing beliefs on a piece that's about the impossibility of being authentic to oneself. I guess, maybe you could say busting your ass. Maybe I was doing that. I don't know. I was asking a question. I was saying, why do we have to defer to mainstream sensibilities, which are themselves not. The mainstream sensibilities don't just happen in a vacuum. You know, they are formulated by these Lugenpress types. Okay, and I respond, I didn't call you an NPC. It's stuck in my craw for non-ideological reasons. I dislike sanctimoniousness and the scapegoating of those with distant perspectives. I didn't accuse you of doing those things, although for some reason you have reacted as if I did. And that was it. There was no more. That was where the conversation ends. She didn't respond to that. So, let me know what y'all think about this exchange. Thanks for watching.